In today's video, I will be exposing all of my failures. Okay, so this is actually a video I've wanted to make for a little while, but I couldn't quite figure out how I wanted to do it in a way that was respectful to people who have had great success and people who have had not so much success. Basically, if you've ever spent any significant amount of time on social media or job sites like LinkedIn, you've probably seen messages like this one. First and foremost, and this is a point I wanted to make from the very start of this video, I have absolutely no issue with people choosing to do that on social media. The reason why posts like this can be a problem is because if you're someone who hasn't exactly been having the same levels of success, it can be really demoralizing. As a result, I decided it was time to flip the script and talk about the other side of the narrative that most people won't talk about, which is all of the failures that lead up to these successes that generally go on behind closed doors. And outside of all the small rejections and failures that we face on a day-to-day basis, at least in my life so far, there's been two significant types of failure that I've experienced, and this is probably applicable to a lot of you as well, which is in terms of colleges and in terms of jobs. In terms of colleges, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the college that I ended up going to, Georgia Tech, was not my number one pick, wasn't even my number two pick. In fact, it was barely even on my radar until pretty late in the process. In hindsight, looking back at my senior year of high school, I was pretty naive in terms of thinking I was going to be getting into a lot of my top colleges. I had a 4.0, I was valedictorian, I was in a lot of different activities and clubs and sports. I had done pretty well on my SATs, and I figured all of these things put together was going to put me in a great position to get into my reach schools. And then I promptly got rejected from pretty much every single one of my reach schools, with the exception of Georgia Tech and later University of Waterloo in Canada. In fact, I had originally only been expecting to apply to one college. I had decided a little while before that I was going to do early decision at Cornell. December came around, I got my decision. I didn't even get deferred, I just got flat out rejected. And that definitely sucked, and it felt awful because then I had to go play a concert an hour later for my high school. But in the long term, I'm definitely glad things worked out the way they did because I don't think I would have been a great fit there. Over the past 2 years, there are aspects of this story that I have shared and talked about with you guys, but for a long time, I was really embarrassed to even talk about the fact that I had applied to Cornell early decision and just been rejected because I was embarrassed that I hadn't been able to get into the school and that I was not good enough to get into a school like Cornell. What I've come to learn or accept since then is that you shouldn't be embarrassed about getting rejected by any college, because a rejection or an acceptance to a college doesn't define you, your intelligence, your worth, or anything like that. Someone at that school, some recruiter, just made a decision about whether or not they wanted to accept you, and that is literally all that decision means. I also want to say that I don't think any one college is going to be the perfect fit for you. I don't think Cornell would have been the perfect fit for me. Georgia Tech ended up being a pretty good fit, but also was not perfect in a lot of ways. And I understand if you don't want to go screaming it from the rooftops that you've been rejected from your top college, but definitely don't feel like it should be weighing you down for the next several years, that you're ashamed that you didn't get to go to your top college, because it happens to a lot of people. That's why they're called reach schools, and there's absolutely nothing wrong and nothing devaluing about not getting into your top college. It doesn't mean you're not smart enough to do well there, or you wouldn't be a good fit, or that you wouldn't be able to cut it there. All it means is that you just weren't accepted. And that's it. The second main topic of this video, as you could probably guess, is related to getting rejected from internships for different companies. And boy, are there a heck of a lot of companies that rejected me in college. I'll lead off by saying in the fall semesters of my sophomore and junior years, applying to internships was a borderline obsession for me. I had a spreadsheet, I later made an app dedicated to doing it, and as a result, if you apply to a lot of places, you're probably going to get rejected from a lot of places. Despite the fact that in my junior year, I ultimately landed an internship I was really excited about with Microsoft, I got rejected by so many different companies along the way. And you might consider a lot of these companies less prestigious or less exciting or less competitive, whatever you want to call them. It wasn't that I just applied to a handful of my dream companies, got into Microsoft, and went along my way. I got rejected by over half of the companies, either just them ghosting me or just flat out rejecting me and not giving me a coding challenge. And I was applying to well over 50 companies, I think my junior year, my sophomore year, I'm pretty sure it was over 100 companies. So yeah, I got rejected by a heck of a lot of companies. Now, obviously I'm not gonna be calling out any specific companies because that just doesn't feel like the right thing to do, and also that would take forever. But I will say that there were definitely internship opportunities that I felt I was strong enough to be competitive for, that I never heard anything back from, no first round, no coding challenge or anything like that. But people I knew were getting offers from them and going through the whole process. And it definitely makes you wonder, what is it that they see in those other people that they don't see in me? Am I just not a good enough candidate? Can I not compete? Am I not good enough for this company? The truth of the matter is, and it can be hard to see this in the heat of the moment when you're applying to these places and getting those rejections, it's a very subjective process. It doesn't mean that you're not a qualified candidate if you're getting rejected, and even if you get accepted, it doesn't mean you're a qualified candidate. It's someone's perception of looking at a piece of paper, or maybe not even a person, maybe it's an algorithm, frankly, and they're making a judgment call about whether or not they want to move forward with you. So just because you don't get to move forward to interviews, or you get an interview and you don't get an offer, doesn't mean you're not good enough to work at that company. For example, if there's 10,000 people who are relatively qualified for an opening and they can only interview 1,000 of those people, that means 9,000 people who thought they were qualified when they first applied are never going to hear back or are going to get a rejection and are naturally going to wonder, can I not cut it at that company? Like I mentioned before, if I look at my old spreadsheet from my junior year, it looks like I got flat out rejected or just didn't hear back from over half of the companies that I had applied to. And note, this was as a junior with 2 prior internships and a 4.0 from a top 10 school in the country for computer science. So even in that position where I had done pretty well for myself in the first 2 years of college, I was still getting rejected by a ton of companies. And naturally, freshman and sophomore years, it was even worse. My freshman year, I barely heard back from anyone, and eventually I got one company who was willing to take a flyer on me, who I ended up getting an internship from, and I'm so grateful to them for doing that. But sophomore year, I still had a lot of the same problems. I had some experience, I had gotten some more stuff on my resume, and still a lot of people were not willing to take a chance on me, and I was worried about even getting an internship my sophomore year, despite having had one as a freshman. So all of this to say, when you see other people who are getting offers and opportunities, don't forget about the fact that they got rejected by a lot of different companies before they got to that point. They didn't apply to 5 companies and hear back from 5 companies. They probably applied to 20 companies and heard back from 5 of them. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, when it comes to applying to jobs, you should be applying broadly into as many opportunities as possible and keeping track of it, because if you're only applying to a handful of jobs, it's going to make your life a lot more stressful, and the odds of you actually getting something are going to go down significantly. And if you're someone who's really hung up on going to your dream college or getting into your dream job, that's great. You can definitely shoot for that, prepare, work hard, apply. But even if you're a great fit, even if you think you're smart enough, that you're good enough to go there, realize that the process is subjective, and even if you are good enough, there's a chance that you won't get in. And don't take that personally. Be prepared, be ready for that rejection, and make sure you have a contingency plan in place where you're applying to other places and you're not getting too hung up on one specific college or job or whatever else it happens to be. So the next time you see someone on social media who's celebrating the fact that they got into their top college or their dream job or whatever else it happens to be, you should congratulate them, because it's a great achievement and we should be there to support each other. Just don't forget that along the way they faced probably a lot of hardships, rejections, and failures, just like you, and it's never nearly as straightforward as it looks from the outside looking in. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button, consider sharing it, subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.